Hayes say money can buy almost anything. But on April 15th, 1912, money couldn't buy survival when the Titanic sank. Some of the richest men on earth went down with it, billionaires before the word even existed. Their wealth could move markets, shape governments, and build empires. Yet in those final hours, none of it mattered. Not gold, not power, not status. What mattered was space in a lifeboat, and there wasn't enough. The richest man drowned beside the poorest immigrant because money doesn't erase risk, it only delays it. And every financial system that calls itself unsinkable eventually meets an iceberg. They say money can buy almost anything. But in the early hours of April 15th, 1912, when the Titanic slipped beneath the freezing waters of the North Atlantic, money could not buy survival. Some of the richest and most powerful men in the world went down with that ship. Their fortunes, their influence, and their status rendered completely useless against physics, human error, and the arrogance of an age that believed progress had finally conquered nature. These were men whose wealth could move markets, shape governments, and finance empires. Yet in those few, desperate hours, none of that mattered. Not gold, not stocks, not estates. What mattered was something far more basic: space in a lifeboat, and most of them never got one. The Titanic disaster has been told so many times that we think we already know it. An iceberg, an unsinkable ship, a tragic loss of life. But what makes this story more than a maritime tragedy is its financial dimension. The men who died aboard were not just passengers. They were custodians of immense capital, financiers of railroads, steel, banking, and international trade. Their deaths were not only personal losses. They marked the collapse of dynasties, the sudden transfer of vast fortunes, and the reshaping of financial power in Britain and America at a moment when money and influence were tightly interwoven. Let's begin with John Jacob Astor. At 47 years old, Astor was one of the wealthiest men on earth. His fortune, built on real estate hotels and the legacy of the legendary Astor dynasty, was estimated at over $87 million in 1912, billions in today's terms, a sum large enough to buy entire corporations outright. He had financed libraries, luxury hotels, and grand mansions. Just months before the voyage, he had married a young socialite, Madeline Force, causing scandal because she was nearly 30 years younger than him. The Titanic voyage was their honeymoon journey home. Astor could have tried to force his way into a lifeboat. Many wealthy men did. But eyewitnesses recalled him helping his wife into one, and then stepping back. He asked if he could join her, explaining that she was pregnant. The crew refused. In that moment, wealth, power, and status meant nothing. Astor was last seen calmly smoking a cigarette on the deck, moments before the ocean claimed him. His fortune passed to his unborn child. His death was not just a personal tragedy. It was the abrupt transfer of one of the largest estates in American history. Then there was Benjamin Guggenheim, heir to the Guggenheim mining fortune, a man known for indulgence and excess. Guggenheim was traveling with his mistress, Leontine Aubart. At first, he treated the collision lightly, but as the reality of the sinking became undeniable, he made a decision that would become legendary. He changed into formal evening wear and reportedly told a steward, "We've dressed up in our best and are prepared to go down like gentlemen." His mistress survived in a lifeboat. He did not. His death symbolized an old-world elite mindset, the belief that dignity and reputation, even at the cost of life, defined a man's legacy. But history is indifferent to dignity. What remained were financial consequences, shifts within the Guggenheim empire, tighter family control, and a stark reminder that even industrial dynasties could be decapitated in a single night. Another powerful figure aboard was Isidor Straus, co-owner of Macy's department store. Straus was not only wealthy, he was influential, a former congressman, a philanthropist, a public figure. He and his wife Ida were offered seats on lifeboats. Ida refused. "We have lived together for many years," she said, "and where you go, I go." They died side by side. The Straus fortune survived and passed to their heirs, but the symbolism was profound. One of America's greatest retail magnates was undone not by competition, not by financial failure, but by ice in the darkness. His death exposed a truth no balance sheet can hide. Wealth may insulate, but does not make one immortal. The list continues. George Widener, heir to a Philadelphia transit fortune, perished. His son, Harry Elkins Widener, a bibliophile and Harvard graduate, died with him. Their loss altered the course of an entire family, reshaping trusts, redirecting capital, and ultimately leading to construction of Harvard's Widener Library, a monument born from financial tragedy. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, also perished, leaving behind haunting questions of hubris and responsibility. But in terms of raw economic impact, it was the deaths of men like Astor, Guggenheim, Strauss, and Widener that truly shook society. They were not merely symbols of privilege. They were pillars of a financial system built on inheritance, connections, and industrial capital. To truly understand Titanic, we must place it in its economic moment. The year 1912 sat on the edge of catastrophe. The world basked in the illusion of stability. The British Empire dominated global trade. America was rising as an industrial giant, and the wealthy elite lived inside a bubble of opulence. Their palaces in Newport, their estates in London, their private rail cars. This was a gilded age, already fading but not yet gone. Just 2 years later, the First World War would shatter this world forever. But in that spring, when the Titanic sailed from Southampton, it represented the final breath of aristocratic confidence. The ship itself was a monument to this belief. Marketed as unsinkable, Titanic's first-class spaces were floating palaces designed for men like Astor and Guggenheim. The most luxurious tickets cost the equivalent of tens of thousands of dollars today. These men were not simply traveling. They were displaying power, wealth, and dominance. And yet, when the iceberg tore open the hull, privilege collapsed into cold mathematics. There were lifeboats for only about half the passengers. No amount of influence could change that equation. When Titanic sank, it was not only lives that disappeared beneath the water, it was the stability of financial empires. The deaths of Astor, Guggenheim, Strauss, and Widener triggered sudden inheritance transfers, legal battles, trust restructuring, and the birth of new institutions. Inheritance law was tested as widows, children, and trustees became custodians of unimaginable wealth. In this sense, the Titanic was not only a tragedy, it was a forced redistribution of some of the largest fortunes on Earth. And yet, beyond individual families, the disaster revealed something deeper. Wealth has limits. First-class passengers had higher survival rates. Money did by better odds. But even among the rich, death was unavoidable. The richest man drowned alongside the poorest immigrant. Wealth creates probabilities, not guarantees. And that truth applies to every financial system. Now think about today. The Titanic sailed in 1912, but its lesson feels uncomfortably modern. The ship was called unsinkable, just as markets are often treated as invincible. In 2008, we were told housing prices could never fall. In 2021, crypto was said to be unstoppable. Before 1929, prosperity was considered permanent. Every time the iceberg arrived, the Titanic also exposes another truth. Wealth concentration does not guarantee survival. Today, billionaires build bunkers by islands and dream of Mars. But history shows that money can buy time, not immunity. Just as Astor's billions could not buy a lifeboat, modern fortunes may fail in the face of systemic collapse. And yet, the paradox remains. While money cannot prevent catastrophe, it determines who suffers first. On the Titanic, third-class passengers were locked behind gates, forced through narrow corridors, and given worse odds. Poverty became a sentence. Today, inequality plays the same role. In every crisis, pandemics, inflation, climate disasters, the poor drown first. The rich may fall later, but only after the vulnerable are sacrificed. Economic history is, at its core, the record of who gets the lifeboats. So, what do we learn? First, never let wealth blind you to risk. Second, no fortune is immune to sudden transfer or decay. Third, survival depends less on status than on preparation, speed, and sometimes pure luck. The Titanic reminds us that money is a tool, powerful but limited. History is not abstract. It is the blueprint of human overconfidence and resilience. Titanic is every bubble, every crash, every illusion of permanence. Tulip mania, the South Sea bubble. 1929, 2008, and the crises still ahead. History doesn't repeat, but it echoes. And unless we listen, it echoes again. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.